I had a nightmare this morning. It was quite intense. I was walking through a diner. I walked in. I saw a young lady to my left. I said hello. She said hello in a flirty way back. I don't know if she was a waitress there or she was dining in the restaurant. We exchanged pleasantries, smiling at each other. I walked to the back of the restaurant, go behind the kitchen, ask to use the restroom, and then in the restroom mirror, I notice my right eye, is turning into that stereotypical bug-eyed looking shape that we have become all so familiar with via alien and UFO lore. I peel back my eyelid and there's a drop of blood and I get on the phone and in a panic, I call someone I know and I say, I need to go to the emergency room. I need help. And as I'm calling and as I'm saying this, I realize there's not much they're going to be able to do to help me if I'm turning into an extraterrestrial. I walk out into the street, still on the phone, pleading with this person I know that I need to get to the emergency room, and people are acting strangely in the streets. There's some sort of psychic or mental wave going through people, animating people, and they're doing all sorts of strange things. And I realize this is an apocalyptic event. Now, if you had been watching my dream, which actually sounds really funny when I tell it and almost laughable, but as I experienced it, it was quite terrifying. It is the most terrifying dream I've had in I don't know how long. But if you were watching this or if someone directed a depiction of this dream, it would look very familiar. We've seen scenes like this from movies over and over and over. And oh, I didn't mention that the reason what inspired this dream was that I was thinking about the new Steven Spielberg film, Disclosure Day, when I was going to bed. I am Sabby Reyes Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. Welcome to the 48th FeedbackDef live stream, an ongoing conversation about culture, memory, meaning, and life. Before I begin, there are a number of ways you can support the channel. You can make a straight donation on Cash App. It's $FeedbackDef. You can also do the same on Venmo, FeedbackDef. You can subscribe to my channel. Oh, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description below. I would also urge you to subscribe to my Substack and, of course, to hit the like, subscribe, notification, and hype buttons here on YouTube. It is great to have you. It is great to be here, even after such a jarring dream. Okay. Disclosure Day is the 35th film. It's the new and 35th film from superstar director Steven Spielberg, who I first became familiar with when I saw Jaws in the theater in 1975 as a child. His new film deals with, as you're about to see, as he told the New York Times in a video interview, which I'm going to play a tiny bit for you, deals with the possibility that the government has information on extraterrestrials that the public doesn't have. We've seen this movie before, in quotes, I mean figuratively, right? This trope has been in the pop culture ecosystem, in the air, in the atmosphere, for decades at this point. I also saw the film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, again with my mother in the theater the following year. Spielberg, or actually it was 2 years later, it's the film he followed up Jaws with. And I can remember that scene. It's so iconic. I'm going to show it to you in a moment here, where Richard Dreyfuss is in his car and you see headlights behind him in the rear view or in the back windshield, because the camera is facing him as he's driving. And um, and then he like he like waves his car through. This car passes him, and um, then he sees another. Oh boy, then he sees another pair of lights behind him, and he thinks it's a car, so he's like telling them to go ahead, and it turns out it's a UFO behind him, and the lights float up into the air, and then there's this like super high beam of light uh, down, it's shining down on the car, and everything starts going crazy. I remember that. I remember experiencing that in the theater. And look, I actually believe in the existence of extraterrestrials. I think it would be foolish given the vastness of the universe. It is a mathematical, there's a naive, like the mathematical impossibility that we are this like sole form of life in this gigantic, expanse of planets and stars and potentially now dimensions. It just seems utterly naive that science would adopt this position that echoes a lot of the anthropomorphism of religion, this naive sense of, oh, hundreds of years ago, Europeans thought that the sun revolved around the earth, and that the heavenly bodies, everything revolved around the earth. Everything was centered around us. Even the Bible speaks of nature as if humans are the epicenter of everything that happens. And I find that view really, really, really naive. It doesn't pay respects to the microorganisms all around us and that inhabit us, that are a part of us, that comprise who we are. And it doesn't leave any possibility for macroorganisms or other life forms out there. But even still, I find this constant slow drip or steady drip of imagery of aliens, of nefarious government operations. I mean, we see this in Close Encounters. We see this in E.T., another film of Steven Spielberg's that I absolutely adore. In the X-Files, I remember, being in my early 20s in the 90s when the X-Files was like a big deal, and I remember people getting stoned and watching it, and me thinking, oh, that doesn't seem like a good time, and this flooding of our shared lexicon with conspiratorial stories. I'm open to the real life existence of aliens. I'm quite open to conspiracy narratives if you show me an argument where they make sense. To me, conspiracy theory is not a dirty word. It's not something to be dismissed out of hand. To me, it's just like, look, show me your basis for it. At the same time, the marriage of these two things as something we get normalized to in a kind of reverse shock and awe. It's kind of like wow and numb. It's like, we're going to wow you with these stories, with these like interesting kind of meaty sci-fi narratives that are fun and creepy, and then you're going to kind of get numb to it. That bugs me. And my question for Steven Spielberg, I have not seen Disclosure Day. I am going to go see it. I will post a review on this channel. But my question is, why now? We've had, as I mentioned, decades of this like steady, slow drip of UFO narratives. And again, this is something, as I said, I'm open to. In fact, I think it is naive and even scientifically irresponsible to presume that there are not extraterrestrials. But the constant repetition of this motif in films and TV shows and sci-fi and the ever-present looming sense that there's secrets in the government, which I do think the government is keeping secrets. Nevertheless, having this out there in pop culture, I think, in a way, anesthetizes us to what could possibly be happening. I want to start with a clip that I mentioned from the New York Times. Steven Spielberg speaking to the New York Times. Why is this? Okay, so this is not, this is not the one I want. Oh boy, I'm having trouble navigating this. Let me get this straight. So yeah, here we go. Boom. Let's see. Let me Stop screen. Okay. So yeah, I want to start. I want to play you. Allow StreamYard. Yes. Not now. Allow StreamYard to see your screen. Not now. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Whoops. All right. So let's see. Share this window, not this window. Oh boy, why is this giving me such a hard time? Um, hmm. I may not be able to play you the stuff that I wanted to, which would actually really suck here. All right, let's get out of this and let me just keep talking until I can sort this out. Um, share this window. Let's see. Let's see. Is this what it's going to play here? Nope. I'm in. Whoa! Check this out. We're in this like endless wormhole. Wow, this is like science fiction right here. This is like a science fiction blooper. I'm trying to play. Let's see. New layout. Boy, I wanted to play you the introduction to Steven Spielberg's interview with the New York Times because they talk about how what his motivations are for making this new film. I have like 7 different video clips here that I want to play, and for some reason this is malfunctioning. Stop sharing. Um, and he talks about it. You know, I also have an interview where he's talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he says he feels it's the public's right to know, that this is a public right, that if the government is keeping secrets from us regarding other life forms, we have a right to know. Obviously, aliens have recurred in his work. I mentioned the films Close Encounters of the Third Kind, E.T., there's Minority Report. Um, Steven Spielberg's first film is called Firelight. It is more of a traditional sort of throwback to science fiction with like malevolent extraterrestrials. Again, this has been a theme in Hollywood and filmmaking since the 50s. There has been lots and lots and lots and lots of analysis. I mean, what the alien invasion represented when we were at the height of the Cold War with the Soviets, and how this was a sort of unconscious expression of the collective psyche of being constantly under threat of some sort of siege. But why now? Why, when there's so much imagery, information coming from all angles, and bad information and disinformation and tainted information, uh, 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 things that you can't tell whether they're true or not, where they're coming from, decades and decades worth of lore of these conspiracies percolating in at the margins of the public consciousness, ideas that there are hybrid creatures walking among us, ideas that we are in fact a hybrid being that was genetically modified by some other extraterrestrial race, etc. This all of this has been out there to the point where you practically yawn at this stuff. What could this film possibly do to clarify what's actually true? What can this do other than sort of aggravate existing anxieties, existing fascinations, existing fantasies, perhaps, about why all of this is happening? Um, I've I've often wondered, because I'm a fan of Ray Bradbury, for example. So I understand the appeal of sci-fi. I've often wondered about the type of fan who gravitates to things like Star Trek and Star Wars, and or even more Philip K. Dick and Isaac Asimov and Blade Runner, and kids that have NASA T-shirts and they're all into the space program and stuff. I always feel there's this undercurrent of manipulation with that. Like, sure, I'm looking out at the sky right now, and it is certainly natural for us to wonder about what's out there in the cosmos and what could possibly be. And I understand why the idea of traveling to other worlds and being in the future and having spacecraft, I understand why all of that is highly appealing. But again, the endless barrage of this imagery to the point where something like Star Wars and Star Trek, people walk around. Joseph Campbell talked about this, about how those stories are now archetypally woven into our collective consciousness. The public walks around, like in many parts of the world, with Star Wars characters kind of in their heads, the same way, as Joseph Campbell pointed out, other ancient peoples or pre-industrial people would walk around with their ideas of deities and gods and their mythos, right? Why is this allure so powerful? The idea of a creature from another world coming to visit us and do either harm or do good, or in the case of E.T., hide in the closet and pretend to be a stuffed animal and make friends with your kids. Why is this so enchanting? And yet, why do we not have a sober conversation about the possibility of extraterrestrials? Why do we not just unpack that and say, okay, look, what is it that we know? What are some truths that we can start, some basic facts that we can start with? What are the questions that are left unanswered by those truths, and where do we go from there? Why must we engage in this? Why is it that when we broach this subject, it's either through the eyes of fantasy or through a sense of having to go underground to look for information because the mainstream narrative won't tolerate? It sort of breeds this sort of underground occult, and I don't mean occult as in occult ritual, but this sort of secret knowledge that you have to kind of dig your way into finding out. I can see why it was like that for a long time, and now it's not so much like that with YouTube, and even with the government really declassifying documents on UFO sightings and former Air Force people and doing shows and going on podcasts. It almost seems like it's almost like the legalization of weed. All of a sudden the paradigm is upside down. All of a sudden it's like the entire media infrastructure is promoting now these ideas, and yet I don't see any more clarity. And perhaps Steven Spielberg was trying to, with this film, become a voice, like shine a light and offer some clarity as to what the hell is going on here. But I don't know. Do I trust Hollywood? Do I trust a big budget Hollywood director to do that in any kind of sober, responsible way, a useful way? Not really. Also, I think it's interesting, and I want to show you the trailer, but my share screen is malfunctioning. They in the trailer they show the creature, one of the extraterrestrials. It's like, why would you do that? Just from a marketing perspective and a hey, let's entice people to go to this film perspective, and let's make it worth their while to go see it. Why on earth would you give away the payoff? Would you spoil it right there in the trailer? Why don't you build people up to be curious and to go and then see this creature? Now, is that really the creature in the film? Is that some sort of sequence that somebody imagines? Maybe that's a decoy. I don't know, but I doubt it. It's like it again, the way this thing looks is very much in line with these grays that have been out there. People have drawn these types of people have described that kind of humanoid with the big eyes that I was dreaming my one eye was becoming. These gray, vaguely bug-like, humanoid but sort of insect-like beings that look like they could be us in the future, potentially. People have been describing that and depicting that for forever now. and not forever, in terms of our pop culture memory, for a very long time. And why is that in the trailer? From just a purely cinematic perspective and a storytelling perspective and a, hey, let's get asses in the seats, let's get people to come and watch this film, the trailer had a lot more suspense in it before they show this gray being, like hovering over this character, this woman, on what is presumably an operating table or something, right? Like it would have been way more effective to not show that. And yet there it is. Again, yet another mainstream platform or mainstream adjacent platform pumping us full with this image of these gray beings with these big eyes. I have a clip queued up of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about their eyes. Let me see if I can get that to work, and if you'll bear with me, let's see. What the hell? Share screen. Oh, I know why. Because I'm in Firefox and I'm not in Chrome. Whoops. That's why. Supposed to open this in Chrome, and I can't actually share tabs. Damn it. Let me see if I can actually enter the studio through Chrome and see if I don't like crash the system by doing so. This might get weird, but let's see. But why do we need that? Why do we need to see that bug-eyed creature one more time? Why is Steven Spielberg showing us this creature one more time, almost 50 years after he showed us something similar at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind? Now, in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, you don't see the alien until the very, very, very end, right? And here, it's like, oh, there it is in the trailer. Why is that so casually tossed in there? I want to know. Okay, cool. Now I'm in both screens. All right, so I can close this. Let's see. Here we go. All right. Cool. Why is this so casually um like tossed about? It bugs me. Um and I wonder what the intentions are. And again, instead of filling us with wonder and a sense of like, oh, I want to know the truth, instead of galvanizing people to to try to make sense of a world that clearly doesn't make sense, where no explanation for what is around us, like the properties of matter that are around us, are going to be adequate to understand this UFO phenomenon, right? Whatever it is, or whatever multiple things it might be, which I think is likely, right? Whatever explanations there are for these various phenomena, you're going to run into like either like, no, this is not plausible, or hey, this defies the understanding of science that we all kind of have been encouraged to share. So what is the purpose of having things like the X-Files and films, all these, like what is that stupid movie Independence Day, where the aliens come and there's the beam and it's like shooting down on the White House, like Men in Black, which I know is a comedy. What is the purpose of repetitively bombarding us with images, and then you walk out of the theater after eating your popcorn and your Raisinets, you're like, yeah, that was cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I'll go home and watch some X Files and smoke some weed, and like enjoy some, this titillating sense of like a dark conspiracy with like monsters and the government, and then go about my life, and that's it. It has a way of like completely narcotizing us against what could possibly be going on. It short circuits and cauterizes our actual curiosity by filling us with fantastical junk food that tickles the imagination. I'm not saying this is what Steven Spielberg's film does, because I haven't seen it, but I'm concerned that this is going to be the ultimate result of this film, rather than actually working towards having people have a better grip on have a better grip or motivation to figure out what is actually happening, right? To try to make sense of UFOs and extraterrestrials and the universe and nature and where we are in the cosmos and all these questions, all these existential questions. I wonder whether Hollywood, Steven Spielberg putting out yet another film on this subject will have the reverse effect of what he says he is trying to do. So here is a little bit of a clip from his interview with the New York Times. I'm queuing it up as I speak. I'm getting past the commercial because I screwed up here and I opened this in Firefox instead of Chrome. Let's see, 139. Let's see. All right. All right. All right. So the host is like kind of kissing his ass a little bit. And she's like giggling with him. And she's asking him like, "Oh, do I have the right shot here? Can you talk me through like, can you tell me about my shot?" And then and then she asks a question.
Steven Spielberg, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your new film, Disclosure Day. And I won't give too much away, but it is a movie about the government's efforts to hide information about aliens from the public. And it was inspired, as I understand it, by reporting, at least in part, in the New York Times about a secret government program that studied what people might refer to as UFOs. You must read and watch so much. Everybody and their dentist must be pitching you a movie idea. So what was it about this article in this moment that made you think, I have got to make a movie about this?
Well, it was just that things had been percolating and there had been so many more videos backing up eyewitness testimony and creating more credibility among the witness base once the smartphone came into real existence with the iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, once you went from the BlackBerry to that, everything kind of changed. And long before that story, people were starting to come forward, and the witnesses have been coming forward ever since Roswell. I mean, Hollywood made a lot of movies about UFOs in those days called flying saucers. There was the movie Earth versus Flying Saucers.
They sure did make a lot of movies about flying saucers, and I mean, perhaps there was an agenda there, which I'll get into.
There was The Day the Earth Stood Still. And this was all in reaction to UFO sightings in our nation's capital,
right,
when they buzzed the Capitol grounds. And this was in the 50s, early 50s. So it's not that everything started in 2017. Everything got very, I would say, the New York Times, when Helene Cooper and Ralph Blumenthal and Leslie Kean wrote their story and revealed the Tic Tac UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon. I prefer UFO.
Yes, but, we all prefer UFO.
I'm not in control of any of this. All of a sudden, because it was the New York Times, because they gave the story such prominence, that everybody suddenly started to wake up from the malaise of the National Enquirer sensationalized reportage about UFOs.
Okay, so I mean, but is what he's doing, is what Hollywood's response here anything more than? I don't want to say is it anything? Is it accomplishing the same thing that the sensationalizing National Enquirer that he's talking about and criticizing there? Has he contributed to that? Again, I am with him. Like, what he's saying makes perfect sense, that we have had sightings for a long time, and it would appear to me, based on the evidence we have, that a good deal of this stuff does defy explanation, given the tools we have been encouraged to use to explain our world, the physical world, the physics of nature, right? But I'm uncomfortable with the idea that he's like, oh, in the age of the smartphone, now we have all these other eyewitness accounts and they're really compelling. In the age of the smartphone, we're flooded with way too much stuff to even be able to keep up with what is credible and what isn't. And so the fact that he's lending credibility to eyewitness accounts as if he's speaking sort of for the democratization of the understanding of truth, I think that's noble. I think that sounds noble. I hope he's sincere, but I don't know, and I'm skeptical. Here is Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about uh, the eyes of these creatures. All right, so here's Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the eyes of these aliens.
But aliens tend to, as we now think of them, they all have big eyes, and eyes seem to matter. Can you just speak a little bit as a director? And let me throw in the mix the eye contact with a velociraptor.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at my museum, the velociraptor is not much bigger than a big dog, but they were sort of pumped up in Jurassic Park so that you're making eye contact with something that's going to eat you. So not only as a source of fear, but as a potential source of empathy. Just how does that feel to you?
With human beings, eyes are the mirrors of the soul. And to animals, I guess eyes are the mirrors of the appetite. But
come on, that's not that funny. That's not an atrocious question. I thought it was a kind of a fluffy question in disguise as this sort of really grand observation about empathy and eye contact. I want to say that it's interesting because I think Jaws is one of the greatest movies ever made. I think its contribution as being the first summer blockbuster and this really inventive hybrid of an action film, a horror film, a buddy film, like all these different sort of established genre parameters all woven into one. The film is magnificent, and it just kind of burns with inspiration. It's like the film equivalent of, like, I don't know, like an Aerosmith Rocks or something, like the album Rocks by Aerosmith, where it's like there's a certain point in a band's career where they just hit their stride, and directors tend to have that as well, where they're just oozing, where it's like burning off of their skin how much inspiration they have. And Spielberg hit it with that film. But Neil deGrasse Tyson with the Velociraptors talking about Jurassic Park, which I think is, me personally, given the heights that Spielberg achieved with Jaws and with E.T. and with Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think Jurassic Park is like a bunch of swill. It's horrible, I think. I just watched it with my daughter recently, and she really liked it. So I didn't say anything, but it's so cheesy and ridiculous, and it's like, wow, man, like from 1975 to 1993, how much of a fall this guy took. I mean, I know that's almost 20 years, and yes, he did put out Schindler's List that same year, but it's just like schlocky. Like, he was always big, Spielberg is a populist, makes populist entertainment films. I think he does make films. I'm not saying because he makes entertainment it's less worthy or worthwhile from a filmmaking perspective. But something like Jurassic Park, it is like the McDonald's of filmmaking, and like it had a huge McDonald's marketing campaign where they were like marketing the film to kids like crazy, and then you go see it and it's like, this sucks. This is like cheesy. It's like cheesy, like faux horror stupidity. And so to see Neil deGrasse Tyson like, oh yeah, you put the camera at the level of the Velociraptor and you get empathy with the thing that wants to eat you. It's like, shut the hell up. That movie, I don't know. It doesn't live up to his standards. And at this point, we are 30 years past 1993. I just wonder how much can this guy bring it. And I hear him talking about how, what if there's this secret that we need to know? And I'm just like, this is fishy. I want to read to you from, I want to give you some sense of the government, like the Department of Defense and other agencies within the government who have worked with Hollywood in the consulting and shaping narratives. I think this can be somewhat overblown if it's looked at like without some context, but I also think it is on the face of it kind of suspicious. And I want to give you a little bit of background. The character Mulder from the show The X-Files is based on a real person, an astronomer named, where is his first name here? J. Allen Hynek. So he was brought in the 50s as part of Project Blue Book, which ran for 17 years to investigate over 12,000 UFO reports. And so they brought in this civilian astronomer skeptic named J. Allen Hynek, Dr. J. Allen Hynek. And, actually the character of Scully, is based on him, Dana Scully. The character played by Gillian Anderson. And so he gave all of these reports a skeptical eye. And, he's actually the person who came up with the term Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And the more he worked on these cases, he came to his assessment was that over 700 of them were completely, quote unquote, unexplainable by science. And there's this idea, and I can list some sources in the show notes, which I didn't do, but there's this idea that governments, intelligence agencies, the Department of Defense, they plant seeds in pop culture with narratives to popularize them on purpose, perhaps to give cover to some of the covert ops and the technologies that they're using unbeknownst to the public. So if the people average people encounter some aircraft that does all sorts of things that we are not conditioned to expect an aircraft can do, that perhaps if it is the product of defense research, like a secret, something that's secret and being withheld, that people will immediately default to, oh, that's an alien, that must be a UFO, that must be an extraterrestrial. Again, I say this as somebody who completely believes there's life on elsewhere in the cosmos. I do agree with Spielberg that the evidence is, I don't want to say necessarily overwhelming, but there's too much evidence going back to ancient times of encounters with beings that more or less fit the bill of what we think of as visitors from other worlds in flying saucers. Okay, great. But I'm talking about the perpetuation of this idea and the forms it takes in popular entertainment to the point where we just accept it. I mean, there's bumper stickers and emoji with that little alien guy head. You can walk into like a what is it called? A head shop and see all sorts of stickers and t-shirts. Or you can walk into a mall and buy t-shirts with that little alien guy, like in a Hawaiian shirt, doing all sorts of things, right? Like, that's something to stop and think about. Why is this so? Why are we at the point where? Why were we put in a position to see this so much that we would take it for granted and almost as humorous to this point? Why? And the postulation is that perhaps this gives real defense technology research. It makes it one step removed, because if people ever see weird things in the sky, the first thing they're going to jump to is, because of all this pop culture stuff, they're going to think it's aliens, when it might actually be your government's military fucking around with things that we have no conception of. Right? Now, again, I've heard the theory that these extraterrestrials, they are actually us from the future, which does make perfect sense, because they like I said, they have this vaguely humanoid look to them, that they could be what we evolved to. Like, you could sort of see it going that way, and they just like have huge heads and like little bodies, and they have gray skin, and their eyes are like, "Whoa," you know. This was really, really terrifying when I dreamed this morning. I was like quite freaked out when I woke up about this. And then I was like, fuck you, Steven Spielberg, for like, because like I was thinking about it before bed, and had a dream with it. And I'm like more annoyed about that. But are these narratives being put in, while I think it's totally plausible that there's something strange and potentially otherworldly going on, is the fact that they are so common, these narratives, are they being put in front of our laps, or right there in our faces, to throw us off the trail of something else, that some other explanation for what's going on? I'm not even saying there's a blanket explanation that all UFOs sightings are one and the same. I'm not even going to get into the abduction phenomenon and Whitley Strieber and all that communion and all that stuff. I an ex-girlfriend once, after seeing one of these documentaries, I don't remember what channel it was, on some cable channel in the 90s, and they made the grays look really bug-like, which made them even scarier. They looked almost like giant insects. That really, really freaked me out. And I was talking to her about it, and I was like, doesn't that scare you? I mean, that's freaky. Like, even if it is some form of psychosis, that's terrifying. I mean, obviously, if people are being abducted and surgeries and things like that are being performed on them by some non-human creature, that's obviously really, really frightening. But even if it's just some sort of mass psychosis, if people are just imagining, or they're convinced that this is happening, that's just as scary. And her thing was, look, the day I'll worry about getting abducted by extraterrestrials is when if I actually get abducted by extraterrestrials. Until then, I'm not going to worry about it. And I thought, that makes sense. In other words, you don't need to go out of your way to look for stuff and to kind of bring it towards you if it's not an immediate concern. There's this like weird, almost fetish fascination with this stuff that I think is a little bit kind of gross. Like, ooh, wow, and they're implanting babies in people. And I mean, okay, fine. Let's look at what we know and don't know. And if there's something weird indeed going on, where people, I watched a documentary saying that certain women who had these sensations of being abducted, they were given gynecological exams, and it looked as if they had hundreds of abortions, like babies taken from their uterus. It's like, okay, like, that is compelling if true, right? There is something really like, whoa, what the hell is going on there? But this like lurid fascination we have with it, I find kind of dirty and unseemly, and doesn't help. It only makes it seem more trashy, kind of like you're in the pulp fiction section of the bookstore, and doesn't, it's like You want to know what's going on with extraterrestrials and UFO sightings, and go start digging. Take a spoon and start digging through the data that's there. Do it in a sober way. But this sheen of like, yeah, Agent Mulder and Scully and the shapeshifters and the monster and the Cancer Man and all this shit that gets attached to it, it sets off my antenna and doesn't feel good. It feels like come see the bearded lady under the circus tent. It's like a carny kind of like calling out to you to separate you from your $5. And in this case, your $5 is your clear-eyed sense, your clear-eyed ability to evaluate what you're being shown. And that is the last thing we need now, is to undermine our own ability to make sense of things in a world in which we have not been given the tools. And I'm sorry for all you proponents of quote unquote science, it's not enough. Okay. I can show you a clip of Mayim Bialik, who is a former child actress who has a doctorate in neuroscience from UCLA, who like hosts discussions on all sorts of what would in common parlance be referred to as supernatural phenomena on her podcast. And she does a very earnest, sober, level-headed attempt at trying to get to some of the bottom of some of these things that don't comfortably fit within the bounds of science that we are all accustomed to adhering to. And that is the way to go about this stuff, in a sober way, with your wonderment intact. Turning it into something that could be on the cover of the National Enquirer, turning it into trash, creepy underbelly, carnival type fascination, fetish entertainment, pulp fiction, pulpy trash shit is not going to get us anywhere. And I'm not saying that's what Spielberg is doing, but I question his like golly gee whiz earnestness. I'm not even saying that he's lying necessarily, but something about the way he's coming across, like, oh no, we've all got cell phones, we've all got these sightings, and what if the government is keeping secrets from us? It's like, yeah, we've been down this fucking road before. Like how is the discussion and the murmurings, the residual buzz around your film going to do anything but obfuscate people's ability to get at maybe what's really going on here? And I don't profess to know, and I don't rule anything out, but I don't need another Hollywood film addressing this. What I need is like actual documentation, and just like somebody coming forward and being like, look, this is what I fucking saw. This is what I did, perhaps at the behest of my own government. This is what I was told. Make of that what you will. That's what we need, not something that gets people into theaters to have them, talking about the scene where the gray alien with its big eyes comes and hovers over the lead actress in the film. It's just, this is a little too familiar at this point. A little too, like, again, we've seen this movie before. Maybe not this specific actual literal film, but this starts to feel like a playbook after a while. And I don't think the public is in any shape to grapple with any of this stuff. And I think this film will, I'm predicting, not having seen it, with the benefit of not having seen it, I think this film will do zero to orient people or to give us some sort of shared ability to point towards, hey, what could actually be happening here? And that's unfortunate. That may not necessarily be the fault of Steven Spielberg, but you know what would have been cooler than this is maybe a documentary on it. Why do we need to go to some fantastical work of fiction? Why couldn't he have been like, all right, I'm Steven Spielberg. I'm going to commission a documentary on all these cell phone clips, and I'm going to talk on camera, and I'm going to narrate the fucking thing myself, and I'm going to look you in the eye through the camera and be like, look, there's some shit going on here, and I urge you to check this out. Why didn't he do that? Why did he have to do it in this form? So I will watch this film. I will review it. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Maybe I'm completely wrong and on where he's coming from. I want to share with you a clip of someone somebody who identifies as Space God the Thug. This is someone who walks around in full, like, gray alien gear, like he like talks like he's from the streets of LA, but he's an alien. And he's, super convinced that he commits to this. He's committed. This is Space God the Thug right here. And he is offering his observations on our world on rapper Killer Mike's podcast. Here's Space God the Thug.
Like, you know what I mean? You gotta think about it. Like, man, y'all paying rent on Earth, man. That sounds crazy.
That don't even make no sense.
That don't even make no sense, man.
You-
They're like a penguin paying to live in the ocean. A gorilla paying to stay in the jungle. I thought you were from Earth. So why you gotta pay to stay on Earth?
Why you got to pay?
I ain't never heard that no other planet, man. So yeah, that's different.
Damn, we the only one doing it.
Man, these was so crazy. Y'all let a few crazy folk make y'all do this. If y'all just say, hey, man, everybody on Earth just say, hey, man, I ain't paying no rent, no more. What they gonna do?
I think you said something like that before.
I have said it. Someone told me to be quiet. Shadow white folk business.
Is that right?
So that's Space God the Thug. There's a great clip of him, which I wasn't able to find, where he's like, somebody walks up to him and asks him if he has any advice or anything. And he's like, yeah, if you feel like you don't fit your world, just leave the motherfucker. Like, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, easier said than done. But I love that commitment. Like, if you were to walk up to this guy and yuck it up with him and like make fun of him and be like, come on, I know you're fucking around, he'd get pissed. He'd answer you like he really is from another world. And look, who are we to say? But I'm not laughing because I'm making fun of him. I'd fucking love to sit down and interview him. But if you do that, you have to understand there's another clip where the host of the show he's on pretends he gets a text from ET, and ET's like, fuck that guy, he sucks, he's just jealous that he doesn't have a movie of his own. And Space God gets like truly pissed and walks off, and he's like, fuck that, he's like, you added that. Like, he gets really angry at the host for like pulling his leg and making fun of him. So look, we can convince ourselves of many things. like when you meet somebody who's that committed, you can only there's only a couple choices you have in how you interact with them. Like, if you talk to Space God the Thug, you have to approach it in a way where like you are allowing room for his identity to be real, insofar as he 100% believes it, or at least is coming off that way, which is interesting. I want to show you somebody else too, in a similar vein, not as humorous, but this is a man named Daryl Inca, who claims to channel an extraterrestrial intelligence named Bashar. Uh, Bashar is a being from another world, another dimension, an Ssani, another extraterrestrial civilization, and Anka has for decades now gone around doing sessions where he channels Bashar and he answers questions as Bashar. Um, and this is how he greets his audience. I'll confess, I'm a fan of Bashar. Now, to me, I don't care whether Daryl Anka is truly tapping into some other type of consciousness from some other realm, or if he's completely lying, or if he thinks he's doing that, like the middle possibility, and it's his imagination is creating some being that ends up like um, expressing itself that is not an actual being, but something his imagination invented, and so for all intents and purposes, real anyway. If this guy is completely like conning people, he's got a super quick mind. He's a fantastic method actor because the way he speaks and expresses like people will throw him questions like, oh, are black people like the first are the first civilization on earth, or what is it about the rules of physics, blah blah. He never flinches. He always has an answer no matter what people throw at him. And I'm like, man, if this guy is just like a con artist, like he's lightning quick. My guess is that his imagination is open to something, and it doesn't really matter what it is, whether it is truly an alien named Bashar or whether it's something else that just spontaneously sprouts from the human imagination, because our consciousness is so powerful, it can invent personae that speak through us. You can almost like possess yourself in a way by just being open. And musicians will tell you all the time. I've had this experience countless times. You feel, and writers will tell you this, sometimes something just beams into your head and you're like, oh, okay. You get an entire scene or entire song or something, a melody, and it's like, where does that come from? And who's to say that we know that that isn't quote unquote real by the standards we use for that concept? Who's to say there isn't some sort of cloud-like space where thoughts are alive in some way? So anyway, here's Bashar greeting his audience.
I'll take a day to you this day of your time. How are you all?
Like a day to you this day of your time. How are you all? People will ask him questions and he'll go, well, all right. Well, all right. Somebody will go to the microphone and be like, oh, hi, Bashar. It's an honor to meet you. It's like, well, all right. And it's an honor to meet you. And, you know, I find it very charming. And again, I'm not making fun of Daryl Anka. I'm not saying that I'm convinced it's not real. I'm saying it doesn't matter to me because I get something out of watching it either way, and I don't have to know what's really happening. But here is Daryl Anka, Bashar, talking about the year 2026 and what that represents. And this brings us full circle to the Spielberg film, because this is what Daryl Anka has to say about what's in store for us this year. Okay, let's see. And here he's talking to Mayim Bialik, who I mentioned earlier. So let me rewind this a little bit.
Of disclosure, if you know
fuck
anything
you.
about alien
Come
abduction.
on. Why can't I rewind this? This sucks. Sorry, guys. let's see. Hopefully, the commercial.
2026 is the year of disclosure. If you know anything about alien abduction,
A little bit.
I had 2 very close broad daylight UFO sightings here over Los Angeles. It's just before dusk, and I'm seeing this black equilateral triangular craft, and I'm looking at this thing gliding across the valley like it was moving on a sheet of glass.
It was hovering.
And then it just shot up in the blink of an eye into the clouds, and it was gone. Once
I don't know if that's Bielik's husband or if that's her producer, but he's like, whoa, with his eyes all huge. Like, I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mayim Bielik. I think she's having discussions that have typically been thought of as being like almost heretical and very dismissed and not permissible within the bounds of actual scientific inquiry. But I also think that anybody on a YouTube channel is a showman, is trying to be showy, and you can end up cheapening your own presentation by kind of going for the throwing bait to the audience. I'm not saying she does that in an egregious way, but like the way the guy is looking like, oh my God. She's sensationalizing a little bit, and I wish she were a little more sober about it. But that's Daryl Anka / Bashar saying 2026 is the year of disclosure, and indeed it is the year of disclosure. In one, whether it's just the Steven Spielberg film or not, the idea that Hollywood has produced something that is now setting the stage for this idea that the government will come forward and disclose to us that there is in fact an extraterrestrial presence that they have been aware of. It's the year 2026 is the year of disclosure, whether it ends up being true or not. It's the year that this idea has been consecrated now in a work of populist art. And where we go from there is anybody's guess. That's all I got for you for today. If you like what I'm laying down, like I said, please do hit the like, subscribe, notification buttons. Let me know what you think of the film Disclosure, of extraterrestrials, of Bashar, of Space God the Thug, of the X-Files, of any of this stuff, of abduction narratives, sci-fi, etc., etc., etc. You know what? Let me leave you on a little more lighthearted clip. This is, let's see. This is, where are we here? Where is that clip? Okay. This is a channel that I typically don't like at all. I mostly hate their music and film coverage, pop culture coverage. I'm a fan of Bill Simmons as a sports commentator. He was a longtime ESPN, high up, upper echelon ESPN figure. He started a site named Grantland, and after leaving ESPN, he started a site named The Ringer. I typically don't like their film, pop culture, music shit at all. But this is an interesting. I kind of thought this was an interesting take on Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Dude, this might be like one of the best directed movies I've ever seen. Is there a bad shot in this movie? Is like you could freeze frame any single thing from this film and it's a painting, but it's Spielberg kind of at like his tools have matured by this point after Jaws.
But he's still 29.
I was just gonna say,
is he even 30?
So much energy and all of the things he's trying and all the things he's doing, and even the stories about the way he made it, which almost sounds like more like the way sometimes Scorsese makes movies, where it's like, we're gonna try this, we're gonna try that, we're gonna try this. I wrote something the night before, or Coppola. That kind of it has that energy. It has that like pure auteurist energy, which I know he obviously is one, but often relies on screenwriters to contribute to the story and stuff like that. This really feels something different in his catalog. Dude, this might be like one of the best directed movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I tried to rewatch that film years after the fact. I must have been in my 30s or 40s, and I don't know. I'll have to rewatch it again. I think what I'll do is I'll go to see Disclosure, and then I'll go see and then I'll watch Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I remember being very wowed by it as a kid and impressed. And what they're talking about there, Bill Simmons was the third guy they showed in like the flannel red shirt. He wasn't the first guy talking, but there is a real majestic beauty to it. It's very grand looking. And I remember the lights and the musical tones that these spaceships communicate with, not knowing what the point of their visit was. I remember the Richard Dreyfuss character building a mountain out of mashed potatoes, just completely getting so fixated and focused on this idea. And I don't know if it registered with me as a kid in the theater, but the lingering impression I always had of that later was that artists are like that. Like when they, totally aside from the UFO, nefarious, black ops, secret government machinations side of things. I remember the look on his face staring at this pile of mashed potatoes and being just having this one thought, this one push towards, I've got to go climb this mountain, just take over his whole system, his mind. I admired that, even not so literally within the plot or the story, but I admired that kind of focus and that level of dedication. Like, I'm doing this come hell or high water, whatever gets in my way. And I kind of see that as like an inadvertent, like unintentional metaphor or analogy for creativity itself, for the artist, for the mission of the artist. And I don't know that Spielberg would have said that was the point at all, but that's kind of like a cool side effect. I didn't connect with the film as much when I watched it as an adult, but I'll watch it again, and I do think it had a real grandeur to it that he was trying to go for something on a grander scale than Jaws. Jaws is a very like existential, primal, there's a shark in the water and it can eat you, and basic survival, and that's it. And it is a really grand film on its own scale, but it's much more down to earth, literally. Close Encounters is like, there's an artfulness to it. There's a almost like just like what that one commentator was saying, that like, some of those shots could be, you could see them projected on the roof of a cathedral or something, and it would be really beautiful and breathtaking in a way that defies words and defies even the story itself or the subject itself. There was a real kind of reaching for the stars for beauty, finding beauty even in this, what could have been a really frightening premise of spaceships and creatures coming down to visit us when we have no idea what their purpose is. And so I think that's to be commended, but I don't know how much the film cohered for me besides that. And now looking at it through my awareness that this dance between Hollywood and intelligence and defense has been going on for quite some time. I hope I can still enjoy it. Let's put it that way. So, as we've established, 2026 is quote unquote the year of disclosure, one way or the other, whether it's just the film or whether there's something else in store for us as we hurtle at warp speed through history on this rock in a backwater of our own galaxy. In the meantime, we'll see what life has in store. Like I said, I'd urge you to hit the like, subscribe, notification buttons, the hype buttons, and most of all to comment. I'm very curious. What are your thoughts on Disclosure Day, on Close Encounters, on Spielberg, on extraterrestrials, UFOs,
um, the X-Files, sci-fi, all of this entire ball of wax that I've touched on today. Where do you stand with all this? Does this film, do you think, clarify, help point us towards the truth and shine a light on the truth? Or does it create more of a muddle of noise and muddle our search for the truth? Let me know. In the meantime, I am Sabby Reyes Kulkarni, the apostate music journalist. Thanks for hanging with me. Over and out.